Hey, Last Boy Scouts, Reid and Scottie. Today we're out at Lemoore Sportsman's Club, and we're going to be talking with Jeff and Marni Watkins from Next Step Training. So stick around. It's going to be a good one. Welcome, Last Boy Scouts. I'm Reid Lantrip, the Scottie Nias, and we're with Jeff and Marni Watkins. We're here at Lemoore Sportsman's Club, and here today we want to talk about gun handling and being a gun owner. And we're going to talk to you guys a little bit about some of the legalities about being a gun owner, a concealed carry, and anything like that that you need to know as a consumer if you're going to purchase a firearm, if you're going to own a firearm. So, Scott, been looking forward to this for a while. We've been talking to Jeff. Jeff's been a great supporter of our channel, and we're a big supporter of their business. And so we want to get into this, and we'll have a good time. Not something we normally do with the guns, but it is something within that survival field that you folks need to know out there. So stick around. It's going to be a good one.
Since last November we started this. Pouring the concrete, getting the shelter up, all the rest of that. You'll see a set of railroad ties on the ground. That's actually going to be the 200 from the prone.
Okay.
From the prone. So what you're going to have down here is 10 lanes.
Folks, thank you for having us out. Very happy to be here. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and give us a little bit of your background?
Okay. He gives it to me, right? So we're Jeff and Marni Watkins. We're with Next Step Training. Get back over here. So you're with Next Step Training. We have been a company since 2019 is when we actually started that. I've been a teacher though since 1993. Took some years off to raise the kids. Kids started getting older, and I decided, I needed to get back into doing something, and teaching has always been a love. Well, during this time, I also found a love of firearms too, and so it ended up being a natural connection. And for any teacher, having students, and especially grown men for some reason, skipping down a hall because woohoo, we get to shoot guns today, is a lot of fun for us because they're self-motivated. Jeff, I'll let you talk about you, because that's you.
So I'm Jeff. We've been married for 32 years, so we're very familiar with each other's style and what each other are capable of. So when we made the plan to come together for this business, we decided she's got a lot of strengths that I don't have, and I have a lot of strengths she doesn't have. So it was a very good fit. So we started, like she said, in 2019. Prior to that, actually, when the business started, I was still working for Department of Corrections, California. And prior to that, I was in the military 8 years, but I actually separated from the military in 1996 and joined up with Department of Corrections. And presently, I'm retired from Department of Corrections, so now we're able to devote more time to the business. Really, our credentials, we're certified through NRA, Department of Justice. We have a range safety officer through the NRA. We just recently certified for chief range safety officer, pistol instructor. There's a lot of certifications we have through Department of Justice and NRA. What else?
So obviously you guys are a wealth of knowledge, and I know both of you in my personal life, one from being a student in school, and Jeff from work, and being one of my mentors and one of my trainers at work. So I can definitely speak on their behalf. They are both a wealth of knowledge, and I've greatly benefited from their teachings and training. So speaking of teachings and trainings, and that, as far as us as private citizens or as gun owners out there, our viewers, what kind of training should a personal private gun owner, apart from military, apart from law enforcement, have?
So generally what we find is, especially in this day's environment, people think that they need to have a gun because they need to protect themselves. They're scared. Bottom line, that's what it comes down to. And so people will go out and they'll purchase a gun, and they meet all the legalities, which we'll talk about later, but they purchase their gun and they think, okay, I have a gun, I'm protected. The problem with that is that it's like taking that 16-year-old into the car dealership without having any training and saying, okay, here's your car, go. And that's and all of a sudden I could see it on your face. It's like, oh my gosh, that's a nightmare. Yeah, it is. And it's a nightmare with guns too. So what I would recommend is, for anybody, you've got to have, at bare minimum, the safety and basic training with a certified instructor, somebody who actually knows what they're doing. Everybody has the brother-in-law who thinks they know what they're doing. Chances are they learned from an uncle who thought he knew what he was doing, and so on and so forth. And all of this stuff has been passed down, including bad habits. And so what we find is we've got a lot of people who are gun owners who have been CCW for years, and they're not accurate with their gun, and that's unacceptable. It's not kind of unacceptable. It is unacceptable. More so than that, they can be unsafe. They can be unsafe with it too. Violating some of the simple safety rules, such as the NRA has actually come back down and they said, we've got 3 fundamental rules that you have to break, all 3, in order to shoot something that you don't want to, bottom line. Number 1, always keep that gun pointed in a safe direction, right? Number 2, always keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready, on target and ready to shoot. And then number 3 is always keep that gun unloaded until it's actually ready to use. A lot of people are familiar with the 4 universal laws, and honestly, I kind of like this better, because you have to break all 3, 2 of the 4, and all this other stuff. So it makes a little bit more sense for me. But you will watch people, even out here at the range, that are coming out there and they think they're being safe, but they violate those rules all the time. And they're not doing them all at the same time.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. Well, thank you for that. I greatly appreciate your viewpoint and your expertise in what type of training we should have. Let's go into a little bit of the legalities as well. As a personal private gun owner, what are some of the legalities that we need to be aware of, whether it be here in the state of California or in general in the United States?
All right, so as a gun owner, you've gone out and you bought a gun. You sign a lot of paperwork in order to purchase it. Some of that paperwork includes rules that you need to be aware of. I would suggest if you're a first-time gun buyer and you go out and buy a gun, ask them to give you a copy of that sheet, because it talks about a lot of legalities, first of all, of even owning it. All right, so from there it breaks down. So now you have your gun. What do you do with that gun? In California in particular, California is very strict on what you can do and can't do with that gun. Outside of California, it's a little bit more general, but in California it's very specific. For instance, you can be charged, there is an actual penal code, with criminal storage of a gun if somebody that you didn't give the gun to has access to that gun because somebody in a lie or shooting something inappropriately, you're still liable as that gun owner. So that gun is registered to you, and you need to keep that in mind. Transportation of guns. You're coming out to Lemoore Sportsman's.
Okay.
How do we transport our gun properly, legally, right? So in order for you to transport that gun, unless it's on a CCW certificate, you have to have that gun unloaded, the ammunition separate, inaccessible to the driver. So what does that mean for you? I don't know. You drive a pickup. I drive a compact car. What does that mean? You got to research all that stuff. How do you keep your guns legal in order to transport them even out to the range? What we find is a lot of people have many guns on their CCW, and to the average person looking at that, they're like, dude, how many guns can you carry? Why do you got 5 guns on your CCW? Or more. The reason is,
I know people like that.
the reason is because when I take them to the range, I don't want to have to worry about making sure everything's locked up, unloaded, ammunition separate. They're all on your CCW. If you get pulled over, they're accessible to you in the car. Yes, I have a permit for all these guns that are accessible to me in the car. They're loaded. I'm not worried about the ammunition. So that is a big reason why so many guns on a CCW. What we find is primarily you're only going to carry 1 or 2 guns, depending on the situation as far as CCW. But again, legally, you have to be very diligent and do your research. California, very specific gun laws. Some of them are even a gray area. For instance, penal code says you cannot carry a concealed weapon while you are masked. Gets interesting, right? This season of COVID.
Absolutely.
So if you dig into the penal code, what you find is there's one sentence in there, and we actually did this because we were like, oh, this is all bad. What does this mean, right? It doesn't mean you can go into Walmart and they say, hey, you need to put a mask on, sir, and you say, I can't because I'm carrying a concealed gun right now. That's not what it means. If you dig into the penal code, what it actually says is if you're masked with the intention to disguise your identity. So, for instance, Halloween.
That's great.
Halloween, you're wearing a full mask for Halloween. You cannot carry concealed because what's your intent? To disguise your identity.
Absolutely.
It's not a medical mandate. It's not whatever it is for COVID. That is not your intent, to disguise your identity. Believe me, I'd rather not wear a mask. But because it's required, we have to wear a mask. That doesn't mean you have to leave your CCW at home.
Absolutely. Now, Jeff, there's something that you said that I absolutely am hanging on to, and I love it, is basically you have to do your own research.
Yes.
You can't solely rely on the individual instructing you or your family members telling you or so on and so forth. Definitely do your own research and find out for yourself.
Well, the bottom line, you're going to be the one that's facing the charges, not the person you heard it from.
Absolutely.
So and I know we speak we speak California because that's where we teach. But there are sites through each state government agency that will list what their laws are. And so even when we, as CCW holders, we have some reciprocity with certain states. Very few, but we do have some. But it's still up to us to know the laws in that state. It's we can't just say, oh well, we're covered and it's not a big deal.
We have to abide by the jurisdiction, whatever laws are in the jurisdiction we are in. So, being from California, we can go to Arizona, right? And this is just one instance. In California, if there is a gun-free sign on a business, that is not legally binding. That's their store policy. So legally, that doesn't mean anything to a CCW. That's their store policy. However, if they know you're carrying a gun, they can ask you to leave because that's their store policy. If you refuse to leave, put up a fuss at that point, they can have you arrested for trespassing, but it's not a gun charge. Let's move to Arizona. You think Arizona, that's a gun-friendly state. They put a sign on a business that is legally binding. You will be arrested for a gun charge if they find you carrying in that store.
Oh, wow.
So these are different laws that you need to understand. Whatever state you're traveling in, you have to abide by those laws. New Jersey, you cannot have hollow point ammunition. Zero. That's a felony in New Jersey. In California, we tell you, as we're training, you should only be carrying hollow point ammunition as a defensive round because of obvious reasons. Anybody who knows anything about ammunition knows why we carry hollow points. New Jersey cannot do that.
Well, and the laws are constantly changing too, and they are not
That's
going
another great point.
they're not going to call you and say, hey, the law's changed. What you were doing yesterday is illegal today.
Okay.
So if that happens, you're not going to say, oh, oopsie.
That's
You
a
got to
great
be aware.
point. Now, as an instructor, how frequently or how often should we as private gun owners be researching to find out that new information about the laws?
So there are organizations that are out there, for instance, California CRPA, California Rifle Pistol Association. I'm going to do that again, California Rifle Pistol Association. I get on their email, and basically I'll get emails that'll say, hey, this is what's going on through the state legislature right now that you need to be aware of. In fact, it was an email that I got from them just being on their radar, on their list as a follower, that said, you know what, they're changing up the requirements for classes for concealed carry weapons. You might need to be aware of this because we're expecting this to take place in the next 6 months. It actually allowed us to completely change curriculum just because we were on that radar versus getting it after the fact and then scrambling because anything that we would do without meeting that criteria, could be worthless at that point. And so just being on that radar. There is another app, and I'm going to have to look it up. It's the concealed carry app that we have. Anyways, it's on our phone. I'll pick it up. But it basically has a list of the states. You have a map, and you have your permit, and it tells you which states you have reciprocity in. And then it also goes further into these are the rules for this state. And they're really good about keeping things up. And so when we start traveling, before we go into a state carrying the way we would normally carry, we check it out. Because there are some states that absolutely positively, no matter how many non-resident CCWs you have, and I can explain that in just a second, that add states, there's some that just say absolutely not, we're not going to honor your CCW here. So being able to see a constitutional carry throughout the United States would be awesome. Put us out of business, but it'd be awesome.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, actually.
Just from answering these first couple of questions, I could tell you guys are a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate it. I'm going to turn time over to my co-host, Reid. He's got a couple questions for you,
Okay.
and then we'll proceed from there.
Awesome.
So we've covered the legalities, the obligations that you need as a gun owner, training that you guys provide. As far as concealed carry, you guys touched a bit on that as far as what the legalities are. But this channel here, we've talked about before, but we do a lot of bushcraft survival. That's kind of our avenue that we generally work in. But how does being a gun owner and possessing a concealed carry, how does that, in your opinion, how does that work into survival?
In this day and age, absolutely a necessity. I should qualify that a little bit. If you are not confident with whatever you're doing to protect yourself, you need to find something that you are, because there are some people that are not gun people, and that's okay. Find out a way to protect yourself. The big deal is that only the bad guy knows the time and place that they're going to show up and cause, evil, disruption, destruction. And all you get to do is kind of react to it. Now, there's some things that you can do to help in advance of that. Is you can be situationally aware of your surroundings, and there's a whole book called Left of Bang that talks about that and how to become situationally aware, how to read behavior cues. Somebody who's getting ready to do something that's wrong, that's evil, that's detrimental to you and yourself. So you need to have a plan. That's the bare minimum. If your plan involves firearms, and you're planning on carrying, especially in the state of California, the way that you can carry as the average citizen is concealed carry, and with a so what you need to do then is you have to. We are a may issue state versus a shall issue state. Okay. So that basically means is we may not. And actually what's kind of crazy about that is it depends on your jurisdiction too, because we have some more friendly Second Amendment jurisdictions, for instance, in the Valley here, that are a little bit more, they're 2A friendly. Whereas the further north you go and the further south you go, you can run into some resistance to people being legally able to.
You really have to be able to argue your case why you need to be able to carry concealed.
What we've found is, at least in our area, most people want to hear about personal safety. They don't want to hear about property, because by law you cannot use lethal force to protect your property. So if it's about money, they don't want to hear it. If it's about, I've got all this jewelry, they don't want to hear it. Give up your property. If it's about safety, okay, now we'll talk about safety.
So, and that goes, and we've talked about it in past videos, as far as that mental mindset, that survival mindset, not just in a wilderness situation, which is where a lot of our focus is, but just in life in general, even in an urban situation. They talk, that bad guy, he has a plan, and you have to be able to compensate on a very quick basis in order to thwart that evil plan, in order to do harm to you. So that really, we've put it, really does feed into that personal survival, not just a wilderness type of survival type of mindset. It's definitely that personal, life-saving type survival, and like I said, we've spoke on that before, and it does definitely tie into all that whole survival umbrella. Whether, like I said, out in the woods, whether on the street, you better have a mental mindset in order to survive whatever situation you come across, because things are going to happen very quickly, and you have to be ready for that.
I'm going to add one thing to what she said, and the only thing I'm going to add is this is just a tool. A firearm is just a tool. You guys in your videos, I'm a big supporter. I watch your videos all the time. If you give a 3-year-old child a ferro rod, what are they going to do with it? Unless they know how to use that thing, it doesn't make a difference.
It's just a tool.
It's just a tool. The firearm is no different than that. You have to know how to use that thing, and when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate, in order for that to be effective. I would even take it one step further and say everybody's primary weapon is your brain. You have to have the mindset. You brought up the mindset. It has to be the mindset. If you want to use a firearm, you have to have the correct mindset to use that firearm.
Yeah.
And when it is appropriate, when it's not, because you're bearing a lot of liability. A ferro rod could be a lot of liability if you set a forest on fire.
Exactly. So you have to be able to know how to use that tool properly. And you really hit the nail on the head, Jeff, is that it's a tool. And you have to know how to use that tool and when it's appropriate, when it's the right time to use that. You also hit on something else. My mind's escaping me right now because it's been a long day already. But you guys really bring up a lot of great points. And our viewers out there, it doesn't matter where you live, whether you're in California, whether you're in, well, we have a lot of viewers in Canada. I know there's a lot going on up there right now. And, you know, our respect goes out to the people who are dealing with a lot up there, but there's people all over the United States. Do your research. What pertains to your area where you're at, because bottom line is knowledge is your weapon. That needs to be your primary weapon, is having that mindset, but having the knowledge of what you're doing. And you know, I've always been told that the best way to deal with a bad situation is not get yourself into it in the first place. It's find those indicators. Like you said, you see, unfortunately, you know, over the years, we've become a little bit jaded with the individuals we've worked with over the years. But I use that as also as a strong point, because you're able to see people. And I hate to do that because you feel like you're judging somebody, you know, like you're judging a book by its cover, but generally your instinct becomes very kind of second nature. You see somebody that you know, there may be ill intent with that person. So how do you avoid that situation? You get yourself out of there.
Exactly.
You find an exit route. So, and that becomes another part of mental survival. So we're gonna do a little bit of B-roll with you guys. I'm gonna show you guys and some of the things that you guys do, some of your techniques, and go from there. But hey, thank you so much for having us, and we'll continue on in just a few minutes, but we want to definitely do the stuff that you guys do and some of the techniques that you use for training.
This is a Glock Model 26.
The loaded magazine. We're using full metal jacket, not the hollow points, because I'm saving money.
Starting off with these, you go, look.
Am I telling too much?
That's pretty accurate.